Hi, Trevor here, reflecting on life through music. Welcome and thank you for stopping by. It's fantastic you are here. Well, I trust you enjoyed my last video on Eagles legend Don Henley, and through his song Boys of Summer, we look back and to see where our lives have come from and the fact that all of our lives are part of who we are. So I trust you found that one an encouragement. We're going from there to a guy that was born in 1946 in Louisville, Kentucky. So, independent singer, he hasn't signed to a label ever, this guy, which makes his discography quite amazing. Singer, songwriter, amazing guitarist, and the great thing I love about this guy is his amazing storytelling ability. When you get into one of his songs, you just get taken along for the ride with his stories. Who are we talking about? Don Francisco. Now, you can't talk about Don without talking about one song in particular, and we'll get onto that one in a minute. But before we do so, between 1976 and 2017, he's released 19 studio albums, three live albums. He's been doing this, so certainly when he's releasing albums, 41-year career. It's quite amazing when you think about it. He's released 7 compilation albums, as you'd expect for someone who's put out that much output, and he's received 2 Dove Awards. Now, the song that we need to talk about when we talk about Don Francisco is He's Alive. Now, in typical Don Francisco style, as he tells the story so well through this song, I'm going to paint a bit of a picture of a story for you as well. So here we go. So a bunch of friends were sitting around having a meal. It had been an incredible 3 years. The guys all were fishermen and various other things, but they all came together and followed this guy around for 3 years. And what an incredible roller coaster it had been in amongst the feeding of people and the healing of people, whether they couldn't walk or whether they couldn't see, or whether they had some kind of mental illness. All of those things got healed. So they saw this guy feed 5,000 people. So they saw this guy walk on the water. And they saw this guy tell so many stories that they really were starting to wonder who it was they were following. Stories such as a lost son or a lost coin or a lost sheep, or forgiveness and getting on with each other. Story after story after story. Or at times when the authorities at the time were starting to get a bit upset with this guy and were trying to trap him. Once there was a story of a girl who was caught in adultery and dragged in front of him. And his answer, instead of coming some kind of answer, said, "He who has the first sin, let him cast the first stone." Of course, that stopped them all in their track. Or they put a coin in front of it and he said, is it legal for us to pay tax to Caesar? And the response was, whose face is on the coin? And they said, Caesar's. And his answer being, render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and render unto God what is God's. And so it didn't matter what people said to him, he always was able to come up with a way of getting out of things, a way of coming an answer that was full of wisdom and insight. Or there was the story of turning water into wine. The feast had ran out of wine, and so he decided to turn water into wine. The stories just went on and on and on. But as these disciples were finding that the guy was starting to become extremely unpopular with the authorities, and sure enough, there was a warrant out for his arrest. And arrest would mean death. So instead of this guy running away and escaping death, he walked straight into it. In fact, he was welcomed into Jerusalem like a superstar. Everyone had heard about this guy and everybody just wanted to see him. But the crowd would go from being over exuberant in their praise and encouragement went towards crucify him when he was hauled in front of the Roman governor Pilate. In fact, the trial and the arrest happened at night. They didn't want people to know what was going on. The trial happened at night, and sure enough, the Jewish leaders decided enough was enough. So they brought him before Pilate. Now, they couldn't condemn the guy to death, and so they put him towards Pilate. Now, Pilate, who was actually a bit wise, really tried to get this guy off. Tried to get him off, but the taunts of crucify him, and the taunts of you're no friend of Caesar if you let this guy go. Of course, Jerusalem was so far from Rome that it really was the back end of the Roman Empire at the time, and Caesar was a little bit worried about his career as well as anything else, and so he handed him Jesus, Son of God, over to be crucified. And they would have thought that was it. They saw him die, they saw him go on a cross, and now we won't get into crucifixion. It was a pretty barbaric way to kill somebody, involved nails and a few other bits and pieces. And the disciples thought that would be it. And they cowered away and didn't know what not to do. But sure enough, and true to the word of Jesus, who prophesied this, 3 days later, he stood in that room amongst them and said, "Peace be with you." Now, people don't come back from the dead, right? Well, some of the shows that are around today, shows like Supernatural and a few other people, you never quite know whether a death is the final straw. But in the real world, people don't come back from the dead. And so for him to stand amongst his disciples, show the nail marks in his hands and the spear mark in his side, it was a pretty amazing thing to see. And and they finally got it. And there's this Jesus that had been following for 3 years truly was the Son of God. And Don Francisco very much paints this picture, this story, from the viewpoint of Peter, who as well as Judas, who betrayed Jesus with a kiss, we have Peter, who denied knowing the guy for 3 years. And from his perspective, the story is told. It captures the fear, it captures the sadness, it captures the betrayal, it captures everything that Peter went through, certainly from the time Jesus was crucified till the time that he came back from the dead. And the only thing that Peter can say at the end is, he's alive, I've been forgiven, heaven's gates are open wide. A real proclamation of what Peter experienced. And of course, he and the disciples went on to do many wonderful things after Jesus went back to his Father in heaven. Now, whatever you think about Jesus, the Son of God, and that the very name conjures up all sorts of emotions and fears. People don't quite know what to do with this story sometimes. But for myself, I suppose, and for others around the world who believe, we believe that he is the way to the Father, and because of his work, we have a relationship with the Creator of the universe. And I don't want to say, come on, believe yourself. That's totally up to you to decide. I'm not going to force this stuff down your throat. It's up to you to decide, and certainly God's invitation to everybody is for them to decide for themselves what they want to do. I suppose for me, as one who has made this decision, well, I know where my future is, and that takes a lot of pressure off my days now. That is for sure. And so, thank you for staying with me with this story today, because it is quite an amazing one. Who would have thought that this guy would go on to do what he did, but he did incredible, miraculous things. And it was only ever about being good and looking after your fellow man and making a positive difference in this world. And for that, he was sent to death. Just goes to show what human beings can be sometimes. And, we didn't really truly understand who this guy was until he died and came back to life. And I'm very thankful to know him for myself, because he's alive today. Well, that's what I believe anyway. So thanks for hanging around as we have experienced and looked at this story today. Well, onto the clips. So, this is considered one of the best Christian songs of all time. It's such a compelling story, finishing off with a compelling ending, that is for sure. Now, when Don Francisco was asked to sing this one at a bit of a contemporary Christian music thing, of course, they were going to put this song in there because of its impact in the world. This, by the way, came off the Forgiven album from 1977. So here we see Don Francisco taking us through the very quiet, the very still, the very haunting to the very majestic at the end. It's great to see a full band behind him here, but he's more than comfortable singing this song with just him and his guitar as well. Either way, you're in for a compelling performance and story when he's alive. Is actually shared with the world, which Don Francisco has done well and truly. So you get to see what I mean by how good his voice is, how good his guitar playing is, how incredible his songwriting is, and how wonderful a storyteller he is. So that's very much an epic song, that is for sure. We then got Jehoshaphat as well. This is a little bit more upbeat and lively. It goes up many keys, this song. And this is a story about a king faced with a multitude of an army that was wanting to take over his kingdom. Jerusalem was doing very well at this point and everybody wanted to take him over. So this is a story about what can happen when you apply simple trust instead of force into a situation, and how that situation was able to be turned around in an incredible story in the Old Testament in the Bible. So again, you get to see how engaging Don Francisco is live and how incredible his guitar work is. To be able to go up the key as many times as he does just shows he's an absolute master of his voice, of his songs, and of his guitar playing. So the links to both of those songs are in the description below. And I really encourage you to look at both of those today because they're quite compelling performances, both of them. And I've also included my last video from Eagles legend Don Henley. So if you want to recap on that one, feel free. Well, if you've come back for another video, as we've looked at this compelling story today, or this is your first time to Life Reflections Through Music, you notice when you look at all my playlists, we go to all sorts of genres, whether it's heavy metal, hard rock, folk, country, even children's music. Just know that we cover all sorts of genres today. And it was Don Francisco's turn today, so that's why we've gone where we have gone. And as Don Henley starts with Don and Don Francisco starts with Don, next time we're going to go on to the guy who did American Pie, as in it's another Don next time. So until then, I'll catch you around.